Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all about that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive thoughts.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy, Devin, and today we are honored to have a special guest on the podcast, Betsy Pepine, and she is a entrepreneurial powerhouse in real estate, in being an author. She is a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Pepine Realty. I don't want to give too much into her story because I love when, it comes from the person themselves and tied into their background. But her story is going to be one of those that you guys should definitely take notes on, because at the end of the day, the Mindset Cafe is about learning from other people's stories and applying the way they overcame obstacles to your own life to get better, at least 1% every single day. So without further ado, Betsy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to hop on the Mindset Cafe.
Thanks, Devin. I'm happy to be here.
So I don't like to dive into, how'd you become an entrepreneur? I like to start way back when, right? What was your childhood like? What was your bring up in, because that kind of gives some context to, your story and how you got here. But what was your childhood like?
It was, I think, great. I'm one of three. I've got an identical twin sister, which is a unique experience. I think people always ask what it's like to be a twin, and I don't know, because I don't know what it's like not to be one. But that's been an interesting part of my journey. But no, it was great. My dad is still a practicing physician at 83 years old, and he's very inspiring because he's so passionate about what he does. And it was so nice to have that, to see that in my dad. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but no, my sisters and I all went to the same college. We did have a lot of, in fact, I was listening to one of your episodes recently where the gentleman, your guest, had never considered anything but entrepreneurship because he grew up in that environment and that's all he knew. And so to see his friend's dad go to work from 9 to 5 seemed so foreign to him. And I had the opposite. My dad was a physician. We actually worked in the summers with him. That's all I knew. And there was definitely an expectation that all three of his girls would be physicians. We were all pre-med in college. And there was pressure to be a physician, because they definitely, I think, sold it as this is what anybody would want, and it was very difficult because in my junior year in college, I had to tell my parents that I was going to pivot from the pre-med track and go into business. And to them, they just had no reference point. They thought that was like me literally quitting college and going on the circus. I mean, that's kind of how they viewed business. And it was really difficult. And so even when I actually went on to graduate school and I got an MBA, but I got an MBA in both marketing, which is what I'm passionate about, but then healthcare management. And I spent a decade in the pharmaceutical industry, just, I think, to kind of satisfy their desire of their children wanting to be in the healthcare industry and feeling like that's where you should be. So that's kind of how my childhood was. But wonderful. I mean, wonderful. I'm very privileged. I understand that. I'm very blessed, and I'm so grateful for that.
No, I mean, that's so amazing. And I mean, it is interesting too, because with your dad being a physician and he's still practicing a physician, I mean, at least my knowledge of that is like, there's not normal 9 to 5 hours, right? It could be all over the place. You could, at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's lives, and health, right?
Yes.
So there's a sense of work ethic that comes with that. And I think that even though there wasn't maybe an entrepreneurial work ethic that was, given off, it was still that work ethic of a physician that, you put people first. And that's so huge. And I mean, because my dad was LAPD. I mean, I didn't have an entrepreneur in my family. And so I still give my dad the recognition for giving me that work ethic, because, he put, the people first, and knew that he had to show up, every single day that he was required to, just like we do it as an entrepreneur. So I think that's so amazing. So you graduate college. What was your first job after you graduated college?
I went from college and I worked at Anderson Consulting, which is like a big management consulting firm. Yeah, I worked in Tampa. Crazily, I didn't even really understand the job. I was really only doing it to check off a box to get into grad school. And so I get there and I spent 3 weeks in a room, which I never left, learning how to code on the computer, which, I mean, I don't know how I missed that in the interview. And then they sent me to St. Charles, Illinois, where I spent another 3 weeks learning how to code, came back and spent 2 years in cubicles coding on sites at different corporate headquarters all over the country. And it was very lonely. It was, I need to be outside. I need the sun. I live in Florida. I need the sun. I know this now, but I didn't then, but I need every day. I need it to be different. Like I thrive on that. And that was just the opposite of everything I didn't know my body needed at the time. So fortunately, I only had to do that for 2 years. And then I went to grad school and then went into the pharmaceutical industry and spent a decade and that was really interesting because I got to spend a decade this was in the advent of direct to consumer marketing of pharmaceutical prescription drugs to the consumer. So before you couldn't do that. And so now we were doing radio ads and television commercials, advertising directly to the consumer. So to be involved in that was so exciting. And what I liked is getting to, a big part of my job was talking to physicians, nurse practitioners, and patients and caregivers about the products that we were making. And so I love that kind of people interaction. Where I felt a huge disconnect was, if I was honest with myself, I didn't care about the product. I just didn't. And I don't know if it wasn't because it wasn't mine. It wasn't, I didn't have any ownership of the product. I didn't have anything to do with the making of the product. I had to do with the marketing of the product. And so, but it was just a product, the class, the industry, I just didn't sadly care about. And I felt an incongruence, working in an industry where I would think, gosh, I wouldn't want to hire me because I'm a hard worker, but I don't really care at the end of the day if they buy this product or not. So, but I would have stayed in that industry because the industry at the time, it's changed a bit, but, it provided a great lifestyle, great income, great benefits, great travel. So I liked that about the job, but I didn't actually like the job. But it took I was 31 and I found myself suddenly single with a 1 and 2 year old. And then the company that I was with did a huge corporate layoff because one of our drugs didn't get approved. And I was a part of that layoff. And I thought, you know what, this is my time. If God, source, universe, whatever you choose to believe, is not telling me, showing me a sign that maybe the path I'm on is not the right one for me, I thought that was it. And so that's when I pivoted and went into real estate.
I mean, sometimes we have to get that push, right? And you can have a great job, you can make good money and still not be bought in. Right. Mm-hmm. You're doing it to check off a box, like you said, almost like you're doing it because you're good at it. You're doing it because you see the need. But at the end of the day, it's not filling your cup. Yeah. So if it's not filling your cup, that means it's taking from your cup. And that can only happen for so long before you end up burning out. Mm-hmm. So I think that sometimes, whatever you want to call it, sometimes that the universe gives you that push, and some people don't see it, and other people like yourself, you're like, oh, this is what I needed. And you don't just pivot into another company, you make a complete pivot. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's so amazing. I mean, I can say for me, I needed that push too, when I was, an employee and, had a disagreement with my employer at the time. And it was like, I had been kind of tiptoeing the line of wanting to do it. And finally it was just like, oh, all right, you know what? I'm just going to take that leap. So now you get into real estate right?
Mhm.
What is that journey like? Because it's an industry. I mean, you went from coding to pharmaceuticals, and now we're in real estate. So what was the initial mindset shift of, just having to get into a completely new industry?
Well, it was definitely scary. I remember I hadn't taken a test in a decade, and I didn't know if I'd be able to pass the state exam. I was petrified of that, and I think that's crazy now when I see. I actually have a real estate school now, and I help people pass that exam. But when you haven't taken an exam in a decade, it's very scary. And then, I had 2 kids to support on a income that was very tenuous at best. But I did say to myself, kind of like, I had lost everything. What else? There's nothing else to lose, right? I had lost my job. I had lost my marriage. Like, it's not going to get worse, right? So that's kind of the mindset I went in with. And I did go in with, I said, okay, Betsy, you've got 2 years. I had built up a nest egg that I knew that the girls and I could survive minimally on 2 years of income that I had saved if I just didn't sell a house. Mm-hmm. And that did provide me some comfort. And then the first 6 months were very rough. I did not know if I was going to make it. It was an industry. It reminded me of high school and why I hated it so much. It just, at least in our area, it seemed like a very, I think when you're an entrepreneur, it's your money. It's money out of your pocket. And when you're in real estate, it's any money that's transacted in the deal is coming directly out of a person's pocket. It's not some corporate budget and, oh, it's okay. We don't need that, or, it's fine. We'll pass on this or whatever. This is directly impacting somebody's take-home pay. Mm-hmm. I think people act very differently when that happens. I see ethics go out the window. I see things that I just had not seen before, and behaviors that I had not seen before, except for like in high school where we're young and we're doing stupid things. And so that really shook me. And I didn't know if I would survive. I didn't know if I had the skin tough enough to survive it. People want to get a deal, so they talk badly about you. I mean, it was just very immature. And so it took me 6 months to say, okay, I'm going to have to either like grow a shell or get out of here. But I really enjoyed the work. I loved helping people. I mean, houses sell themselves. We are facilitating actually usually 2 life events for them, because the buying and selling of a house is a life event. You ask anybody, to name the houses they've bought, they can name every single one. But then you ask them, why did they need to buy the house? And it's almost always precipitated by another life event. So we get to walk customers through the 2 major life events, which is just an honor. And that's what I love. So I stuck with it because I loved it so much. And so then I did that and did it for 2 years. At 2 years in Florida, you can become a broker. But honestly, I did not feel competent enough to be a broker and represent myself. At 2 years, I didn't feel like I had enough experience under my belt to legally represent myself in terms of keeping myself out of trouble. There's so many nuances to real estate that I wasn't aware of. So at 4 years, I then went and became a broker. And then I started building.
So this is like my confusion too, because I think I always interchange the terms. And now that I do know that there is a difference, what's the difference between a real estate agent and a real estate broker?
Oh, so now it's confusing because in some states, they call you a broker the minute you get your license. In Florida, you're a sales associate for 2 years. You get your license and you are a sales associate. Mm. After 2 years, you can sit for the broker exam and become a broker. A broker so then you can become a broker. Then you have broker of record, which is you are running a brokerage. But like I run a brokerage, but I have agents that have earned the broker designation. So they are called broker associates because you can't have 2 brokers. The name broker in Florida is you are managing a brokerage. So you're a broker associate if you have the education and you have the license of a broker, but you're working for somebody else.
Okay.
But a sales associate is just, most people are sales associates. They have their license, but they don't have they're not running the brokerage.
Got it. Okay. That makes more sense. So it's almost like, because we franchise our business. So it's almost like franchisor, franchisee, and for in our industry, trainer, right?
Yes,
So okay.
yes, yes.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I'm in
Mhm.
California, so I know there is a difference between,
Yeah,
they say real estate agents, which is everyone and anyone. Then
yeah,
all of a sudden, I've heard people calling themselves, brokers, and then they're like, "Oh yeah,
right.
I have a brokerage," and I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, yeah. And then to further confuse you, there's the term realtor, which people use that incorrectly. So realtor, anybody with a license to sell real estate, whether you're a sales associate or a broker, can choose to become a realtor. That requires additional education and paying dues. And you are holding yourself, you're saying to the world, I'm going to hold myself to a higher level of ethics than is required with just the license.
Oh,
And
I
so
got
that's the realtors.
Okay, so there's levels to it, and it's almost like different certifications or licenses, and then you kind of
Mhm.
go up the chain. I mean, that
Yeah,
definitely does make sense. I
yeah.
mean, I know this is a little side tangent, and I kind of give you fair game warning. This is how my brain kind of works. Um, I've heard of people, and maybe it's one of those social media things. I never really bought into it, but I've heard of people trying to sell courses on like you can sell homes without a real estate license and all, and flip houses and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Is that someone that's acting as like a sales associate or kind of a whole different game in itself?
You can, if you're doing it for yourself, you can do that. You can flip houses, you can do whatever you want. If you are representing yourself, you don't need a license to do that. So that would be the way they're doing that. You can also wholesale without a license. So you can find deals for people
Mm-hmm.
and um, and then close it like at an attorney's office, and you don't need a license to wholesale.
All right, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's gonna get confusing. So, what I do want to ask though is like because you built your own brokerage, correct? I have that
Yes.
correct. I have that correct.
Yeah.
All right. So you built your own brokerage, and your brokerage, because starting off, we start off as a small business, and
Mhm.
you've grown it to be named in the Inc. 5000 a few
Mhm.
times, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Mhm.
what was that journey like? Because that's not an easy feat.
So the journey, it was funny because when I started my brokerage, had no vision. I just started it because I knew I didn't like to work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to be a solopreneur. I was going to work out of my house. I have my broker license, which allows me to work for myself out of my house and work for nobody else. And that's what I did. And then within a couple of years, over time, people just agents ask if they can work for you because you have to keep your license under a broker. And so some of the agents in the community would ask periodically, hey, can I hang my license with you? And I would say yes, but please no, I don't offer anything. I'm working out of my home. And so a couple of years into the brokerage, me having the license, it's like I'm looking around and I've got 6 or 7 people working out of my house, and it got a little crazy. And so I had the wherewithal to get a coach, and he's like, Betsy, you got to go big or go home. And I'm like, well, I'm already home. Let's go big. So literally, like the next week, I went and bought a office building, and we moved into the office building. And then he helped me create a plan on growing a brokerage. So that's what I did first. And then once I got the brokerage established, I do get bored very easily. I think entrepreneurs do. And so once that was established, I said, okay, well, what other services can I offer customers and agents that we're already serving? And that's how I opened up title and mortgage and the real estate school and the property management company, and then eventually the nonprofit. It was just a matter of what other services can we provide in this experience that will help our customers or our agents.
Hold on, you just skipped over like it was nothing. All these different businesses that you just established, like you just made it sound
Well,
like
I get bored. I do
no,
get
no,
bored.
no, 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 no. Not that. It was like, oh, I just added this and did this and built this. So I want to dive into that because believe me, I get where being an entrepreneur, like, I have the same problem. I mean, that's where the kind of this podcast kind of established from too. And so you said you have your brokerage. I
Mhm.
heard title company. I
Mhm.
heard nonprofit, and I feel like
Mhm.
there was one more in there that I missed.
Mortgage,
Mortgage.
property management, real estate school.
Okay, okay. The real estate school.
Mhm.
That one's. I want to start there. That one's interesting
Mhm.
because I have a friend in another business, owner who is a barber, and he started a barber college. And I've kind of dove in and asked them all, I was like, that's so interesting. I didn't know you could even do that. Right. So what was that process like? Because I mean, you already said you had, let's say six agents working under you. And so essentially you weren't even planning on becoming a mentor in a sense, and it kind of just happened.
Yeah.
And so inevitably you start to have a mindset shift, because you start to realize other people are kind of looking up to you, as the top person, even though you're like, just, yeah, you can hang your license here. I'm working out of my home. Don't, that's all. I don't offer anything. But then they're like, okay, yeah, fine. And then they're watching everything you're doing. So what was that change in your mindset, really realizing that you actually have influence and can help other people along that journey and get to the dream that they want to, have a business or have a lifestyle and a career that, you were able to establish?
So yeah, my mission in life is to improve and empower the lives of others. That's what drives me every day. And so that is what, like, even when I had them working out of my house, I helped, for me, the best thing I can see is they come to me, they do so well, and then they leave me and start their own brokerage. Like, that's success. That means the world to me, that I help somebody's change their family tree because now they have the tools to do what I did. So I look at it from a mindset of abundance, not scarcity, and I'm always trying to help people. So I was doing that even when I was didn't really even have a plan. It's just, I think, in my nature to help people and improve their lives. That's, to me, if my presence doesn't make an impact on someone's life today, then why am I here? Right. So I try to enter every situation, every meeting, thinking, how can I make someone's life different and better by my presence? The school came about because as I grew, our niche has been, we really are strong in training and support, training and development, because of my need to improve and empower the lives of others. And so that tends to attract a newer agent who doesn't have any knowledge of the industry. And I thought, well, how can I get to new agents before they even are agents? And that's through the school, because then they spend a week inside our office, and I get to know them very well. I don't teach the school anymore. I used to, but I don't teach it anymore. But I know exactly at the end of that class who's going to make a good fit and who's not. So it's really been a wonderful recruiting tool for us. And then we added additional classes to help our own agents with you have to do continuing education once you get licensed. And so we have a benefit to all the agents to have the school, not just a recruiting arm.
I think that's so awesome. And then, I mean, the mortgage side, the title side, those three things right there. I mean, I'm huge on, for at least for myself, is a lot of entrepreneurs will start building a car wash, and then they build a Subway, and then they go all over the place, right? Instead of building business verticals within where you currently are, because at the end of the day, if you start spreading yourself out into different industries, there is another entrepreneur that is giving 100% to that industry, and they are going to outperform you, right?
Yeah,
because
I stay in my lane.
but that's the thing, is like, your lane can be widened and become like a freeway, because you create these business verticals which feed the main business, and at the end of the day, they are separate companies and still serve the same purpose. So I think that's so awesome that, I mean, you did that, and that's such a interesting way to go about it, because you get to find like the kind of the best agents, or who's going to be one of the best agents in the start, and then give them that job, instead of having them go look for a job right out the gate. You're like, hey, we have a role for you here. And then it's almost like you're getting to recruit and make money in the recruiting as well, instead of vice versa. Right. So I think that's so cool. So, and then you mentioned you have you started a nonprofit. What was the nonprofit?
The nonprofit is Pepine Gives. So when I was in graduate school, crazily, one of the classes I was able to take for credit was, I was in Philadelphia. We went into West Philadelphia, an impoverished area, gutted row homes, and rebuilt them with our labor, which was donated, and donated supplies. And then we sold these houses at cost, which was nominal, to cost burden families. That experience just really impacted me. I've always been interested in real estate, but seeing how a house truly changes the trajectory of a family was very impactful to me. So then when I had these life events and I was trying to decide what am I going to do when I grow up, I thought, wow, if I could impact lives like that on a daily basis, how cool would that be? And then, that's how I got into real estate. Well, then when I wanted, so service has always been a core value of my own. And it was one of the companies, and we actually changed it to impact because the whole point of doing service is impact. And when we did that in 2018, we created the nonprofit because we wanted to funnel all of our service activities into one area so that we could have a greater impact in a smaller area. And that is addressing the affordable housing issue in our area, North Central Florida. We live in the highest cost burden county in the state of Florida. And so we've partnered with Habitat for Humanity, and we help build affordable housing. And what I love is that it truly is a hand up, not a hand out. These families have to qualify. They have to go through education, not only how do you maintain a home, but also home finances and budgeting. So they really are teed up for success, because the last thing we want to do is foreclose on them. Mm-hmm. So that's just been a wonderful, we're serving a community that would never be in a position to use our services otherwise. And I love that. So that's how that arm came to be.
No, I mean, that's amazing. And again, what's crazy is it's a vertical of the same industry. I actually helped start a 501c3 nonprofit. And it was when I was personal training, we started a nonprofit basketball private school or charter school for this travel ball basketball kids and stuff. And I thought it was so cool. And that's one of my future goals, is to start an arm of like the franchise that is a nonprofit, and something, again, same as you, in the same industry that, the gym and the franchise is all in. But I think that is so awesome that you did that. So, I mean, before I want to take a pivot to the book and everything like that, I do want to ask, you've built now multiple companies, and it's not easy to build one company, let alone build and scale multiple companies. What is your key to building a winning culture within your companies?
Oh yeah, I learned that the hard way. Just because I didn't have an eye on that at the very beginning, and I had a key employee leave me because of that. I was in the pharmaceutical industry, the one that I had left at the time. It was very transactional. With I was selling my time, and they were selling a job, and it was an equal exchange. And that's how I when I went into real estate, that's what I assumed the world was still like that. And what I found very quickly was that the people younger than me were expecting more from their employers. And so the first real person that left me, I asked her why. And she said, there's no sense of family here. There's no growth path for me. And there's no opportunities for me to give back to the community. And she was right on all three accounts. Those things were farthest from my mind. That was a point when we had the 8 people working out of my garage, and I had 0 plans. And what I didn't understand, like, I had put my own company in a box where, to me, it's you went home to your family. You went home to volunteer. Well, this woman was telling me, no, she's coming to work to be a part of a big family and to volunteer in this setting. And that was just earth shattering to me. I'd never experienced that. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I loved that. I had never even envisioned that, again, because I hadn't seen it modeled. So once I got we got our core values down, and that really was the start of creating a great culture. And then what I did was, it was interesting. In my research, I read all these books on great culture, some of the great companies that are known for their culture. And then I came across this award. Florida gives this award to best places to work. And so I contacted the director and I said, send me the application. I mean, I had no position to even remotely even apply, but I wanted to see, what are they looking for? Because that would, that's to me like the vision. I'm very visual. I need to see what the goalpost looks like. And so I put that on my vision board. And several years later, I applied for that and we won.
Wow.
But it's only because that woman quit and I asked her, why are you leaving? And that started the whole thing. And then we really became known for our culture. It took several years, but yeah.
So what was your key for going from where you were? I mean, you read the form and everything like that, but what was maybe one, I don't want to give away all your secrets, but what was one crucial thing that you changed that allowed a culture to start to flourish?
I mean, for me, I think it was just recognizing not, that the mindset that I am working for them. They're not working for me.
Mm.
They are truly my highest priority clients because if I don't have them, I don't have a company. And so I put them before any buyer or seller, regardless of income potential a buyer or seller, highly networked people can do. My staff and my agents are my first priority. And that was a shift for me. I went in thinking, oh no, the buyer, the buyer and the seller of the homes are my clients. They're not my clients. They're secondary clients, but my true clients are the people that work for me.
That is, I think, one of the biggest keys from going as, I mean, I learned this the hard way too, from being a solopreneur to becoming a business owner and to actually understanding what that meant to be a business owner, is that your job is essentially to serve your team. Like
Mm-hmm.
my job now, people ask me, oh, do you still do personal training? I was like, honestly, my day is just, problem solving and asking what the team needs and how do I make it, their lives better, more efficient, and so forth, and creating the opportunities for them. So I think that's so awesome that you said that. And so what would you say? I know this, because it's so interesting, the industry you're in. It's so, at least from the outside, because I've seen only TV shows. I have some friends and family that are in real estate, not to the level you're at, but it seems so cutthroat, or it can be so cutthroat, right?
Yeah.
Not in the way of like car salesy, but from like the TV shows, for example, like Selling Sunset, like you see all the bickering and the gossip and, trying to snake people's deals and so forth. Now, if someone's becoming a real estate agent, right, maybe not going for a brokerage, but, wants to get into real estate sales, what is one of the keys that you would say to start establishing themselves without having to be ruthless? Because I believe or maybe it is being ruthless, but I believe that being collaborative or being, and working together, you can get more done. You may not get the whole pie, but why not have a piece of a bigger pie kind of deal? What would be your advice for, let's say, a new real estate agent coming onto your team?
I mean, I think in any area of life, if you have a mindset of abundance and not scarcity, I think that's so huge. I mean, we will not say a negative thing about another agent. We won't. And I always tell people, be prepared to say it twice. If you're going to say it to me, you're going to say it to the person you're talking about too, So we actually have in our office policy manual a no gossip policy, and it's a one strike and you're out. Like we don't tolerate that. There are other companies that don't feel that way. I just don't. We're here for such a short period of time on this earth. I'm not. I want it to be as pleasant and as enjoyable as possible. And those people do fine too. I'm not saying they don't. That's not the way I choose to run my business. That's not the agents that we are trying to attract. We have occasionally had to rehome people because we found that was not a consistent value that somehow we missed in the interview process. And we will do that nicely and, wish them well, but going with a mindset of abundance. The other thing, what I have found, because you're right, and at least in our industry, is that people are very cutthroat and they don't like to share ideas, although I do like to share mine. I do highly recommend to my agents to get out of this city and county, and like for your training and your education, yes, you can do it online, but you don't meet anybody. You don't get to exchange ideas. Go to another market because those agents will talk to you. They'll tell you what's working, what's not working. They don't view you as competition. Now you have another referral source. They might refer you leads. So network with people outside your direct competition. And usually you'll find, get yourself into mastermind groups. Usually you'll find realtors will open up when they know that you're not in their direct vicinity.
No, that is so true. I mean, that is a great way to think about it too, is like, if other people are going to view you as competition, if you stay local, why not just go outside? Because now you break that barrier down. One thing
Right.
I do want to say is, I love the fact that instead of saying we fire people, it's like you use the we rehome people.
Mhm.
That little word of, I was like, oh, that was clever. But the no gossip policy is interesting. This is the second time I've heard that policy. My aunt is an entrepreneur, and I later learned in life that she was an entrepreneur, but she has a marketing company, and a huge marketing company, and they deal with brands like Target, Walmart, all that kind of stuff, and it's all about
Mhm.
social media influencers. And I had her on the podcast when I first started, and she had mentioned that, and I was like, you can do that? And she's like, yeah. She's like, it's
Yeah.
same thing, one strike you're out. And I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
And it really does keep the culture, you know
It does.
because at the end of the day, like, it's so easy to get frustrated and then start gossiping, but it's like, look, that's not what we're about here. We
Yeah.
are a team at the end of the day. So I think
Yeah.
that's so awesome. So I do want to pivot, and I don't want to, get away from it, because I can go down this rabbit hole. I love it, everything that you're saying. But you wrote a book, right? Breaking Boxes, and it's about overcoming the limitations that we place on ourselves. But what was the inspiration for writing that?
Oh, so a couple of years ago, I found myself just increasingly unhappy, and I was frustrated. In fact, it took me about a year to even admit that to myself, because on paper, I felt like my life looked pretty good, and I know that I'm blessed beyond belief, and so I didn't feel like I had the right to even say that I was unhappy, but I was unhappy, and through journaling and meditation and yoga and bioenergetics and therapy, the common thread that I uncovered was that throughout my life, there's been times when I feel very, very confined. It's like if you ever had the misfortune of purchasing a mattress from Amazon and it arrives on your doorstep in a box, and you're like, how does that mattress fit in that box? And you rip it open, and then 2 days later, the king size mattress has expanded to the size it was designed to be. Well, sometimes I feel like I'm in that box, and I haven't ripped the tape open, ripped the box open. And so I started journaling about them. I started sharing my ideas with other people and my stories, and it resonated with a lot of people. And again, because my mission is to improve and empower the lives of others, I wrote the book truly with the hopes of just changing one person's life. If somebody read this book and they looked at something in a way that they hadn't looked before, and this caused them to make a move towards a more authentic life, then the effort was worth it. And so that has been my goal of writing the book, and why I wrote the book.
No, I mean, that is so awesome. And I love your core value that you keep mentioning. I mean, that is, we have company core values, but and those kind of stem from our personal core values. And one of mine is impact, right? And it's to have a positive impact on as many lives as I can while I can. Right. And so when you keep saying that, it's funny. I just keep smiling, because it's like, that is literally one of my core values. So it's so awesome that we're in alignment. I wrote a book as well, and that was the same thing. If it can change one person's life, that's all it was. That's all it was for.
Yeah.
So what are some of the metaphorical boxes that people maybe hold themselves or feel like they're in business and in life?
Oh God, they're everywhere. So like for me, one of the biggest boxes was, you had to be a physician in your industry. Your gender is a box. I have gotten positions, and afterwards I had been told it was because of my gender alone. Like, that is very offensive to me. That's a whole other topic, but, so your gender puts you in a box. Your family of origin puts you in a box, your industry, your friends and peers, your religion, your race. I talked to a guy whose health was putting him in a box. He's diabetic, and he's viewed differently because he's a diabetic when people find out he's a diabetic. I had a girlfriend during COVID, decided to let her hair go gray. And then about a year ago, I saw her, and her hair was my color, brown. And I'm like, what happened? I thought you were going gray. She said, Betsy, I became invisible. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, when she had gray hair, she said storekeepers would store clerk would just ignore her. She'd get bypassed in line. She said, it was like I didn't exist. She said, I couldn't believe it. So there's so many boxes that we we are put in, and we put other people in. I remember, just a really simple example, not detrimental, but a girlfriend of mine was saying she had to leave because she was running to a dinner party. They do this wine party where they pick a country and they bring the food in and they bring these wines in for the countries. And she had to go to her friend's house. And I was just curious. I said, who's the host? And she said, Father John. Like, Father John? Like Father John at St. Francis? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, what? Like, I couldn't, marry those two images in my mind. But why? We think the minute we hear somebody's a priest, we start thinking things. We know nothing about that person other than what they do. Right. But we start creating this idea in our head. And the problem is with the box, I tell the story where when my girls were young, we would walk these trails, and they were really young. And we would explore, and I would show them, I love nature, and I would show them the different barks on the different trees and the different leaves and the different shapes, the different colors. When their leaves drop, we also have pine needles here. It was really pine cones, all these different things. We would do this every day. Then when they got older, and a little bit older, and I would say, okay, tree, this is a tree, this is a leaf, right? So they would learn the names. Well, then when we would do this walk, and I would stop and we would go through the thing again. My one daughter, my older daughter, Maria, she'd pull my hand and she said, Mom, I already know that's just a tree. And it's like, they're so curious before they know the label. But once you slap a label on a thing or a person, you stop seeing them. And that's where I think the real harm comes in with boxes.
No, definitely. And I want to touch on something that you said in the beginning too. I thought you were going to go a different way with it. And I was like, uh-oh. And then you went the merit system with the gender box, and I was like, oh no, where are we going with this? And then, but honestly, I want to touch on it because I think it is so crucial. And I say this because as a business owner, I've had people say, why don't you guys hire more guys, or why don't you guys hire more girls? And it's like, I don't care what gender you are. The best person for the job gets the job. I don't care what gender you are to get a raise. I don't care how long you've been here. The best person for the job gets the job. That's how I believe, and that's how I'm going to run my company. It's based off of merit. I don't care your skin color. I don't care your gender. Nothing like that. It's at the end of the day, I think that's what it should be on, because at the end of the day, when you get that position, you deserved it.
Right. No, and that's what really I remember when I was asked to be on this board of a bank. I'd always wanted to be on a board, and then so I accepted, and then they told me why I got it. And it was like a slap in the face, because it's like I had done so many things for my business and for the community. But I wasn't getting this. I wasn't getting the offer because of that. I was getting it because of my gender, which I had no control over.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, also, I think sometimes those boxes, like whoever told you that you got that job for that could have been also jealous that you got the position because you earned it through all these things you've created, and their resume of achievements is probably very tied to the bank itself.
That's true. Yeah.
So that's one way and I think people try to put us in boxes, especially to our face, when they feel threatened, right? And to try to kind of put you down a little bit and be like, man, did I just get this from my gender? And then you look at you take an analytical look and be like, why would they say that? And it's like, wait, they started here as an employee, they moved to manager, branch manager, and their life is here. Like they have someone outside that can do everything that they can do, that has never worked a day in the bank. Right. So I think I want you to reframe that and be like, someone saying that it's probably not because of your gender. It's probably because they're just jealous, So, I mean, with everything you have going on, you have multiple businesses, you have a book, what's next for you? Because I know there has to be something.
Because I'm getting bored. So I just recorded last week, a week and a half ago, a course that accompanies the book, because the book is really story-based, and a lot of people are saying, okay, how do I do this? And so the course helps people do that. And then I've started doing a lot of public speaking. So I'm ramping up my website to focus more on that. So those are the two big projects for this year.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask one final question. And I know I didn't give this to you ahead of time, but if you listen to the other episodes, you probably, knew it was coming. on Betsy's legacy wall, right? And
Mhm.
I will say it is not a tombstone. And as many times as I say that to people, sometimes they still give it to me, right?
Mhm.
This is a legacy wall. So it's a quote, it's a message that you would leave for the up and coming generations that you've learned along your life's journey. What would that message be?
Um, it's hard to just pick one. I mean, I sign my books, enjoy the journey. Really as a reminder, because I think myself included, we tend to worry and overthink and lose sight of the bigger picture and why we're here. So it's a check-in to just make sure we keep the right things in priority and enjoy our time here. Because at the end of the day, it's such a short period of time. It goes by so quickly. And just making sure, time is our most precious asset, but we do not treat it like that. It's the only thing we cannot get more of. And none of us know how much time we have. Yet sometimes we waste it on such trivial things, physically and also in our heads. And so that's how I sign my book. So that's probably what I would say.
No, I think I love that one. And it's so true. And this is a lesson that I kind of learned with my business partner when we're still growing fast, but in the beginning, everything was growing fast. And then all of a sudden we kind of hit a lull or, and then it was like, all of a sudden you start panicking and it's like, sometimes you have to take a step back and like realize how far you've come and be present and enjoy where you're at, because otherwise you're not going to appreciate the growth as it's happening as well. So I think that's so awesome. That is so cool. Where can people connect with you and learn more about what you have going on?
Yeah, my website is my name, so betsypepine.com. And then I'm on all the social channels at Betsy Pepine.
Awesome. Well, I will put that in the show notes, guys. If you're listening, it'll be in the show notes, as well as if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the video description. Make sure you guys share this episode with a friend, right? You can pivot at any time in your life. Betsy has already shown that, going from coding to pharmaceuticals to real estate, scaling the real estate company and having multiple businesses within it, and being an author as well as a public speaker. So make sure you guys share this episode with a friend that you care about them leveling up their lives. In turn, it'll help you level up your life. But Betsy, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and, dropping some knowledge.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Devin.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Just in the game of life, mindset causes stress.